Tafshinayim base, it's taking place on Thursday night. Shiur and we're referring the Ikar to the beginning of Parashat Kedoshim. We're going to deal with the first pasuk right at the beginning of Parashat Kedoshim, Vayikra, chapter Yud Tes, pasuk Aleph. Everybody have it? Everybody got it? Alright, so the pasuk begins, Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe Lemor. Daber el kol adas b'nai Yisrael. Speak to the whole congregation of the Jewish people. V'yomata alihem, and you should say to them, Kedoshim to you. You have to be holy. You have to be holy people. Ki, the reason being, Kodesh ani Hashem Elikechem. Because I am holy, I am the Eibishter, your God, Elikechem, and I'm holy. So since I'm holy, then you have to be, all of you have to be holy. So Rashi immediately points out this whole parsha is a very important parsha because he says many of the important essential laws of the Torah are dependent on this parsha, Parsha Kedoshim, and that's why he said it was said to the whole Adas B'nai Yisrael, to the whole congregation, and it was said to Bahakel. He used the expression that Moshe drew together and assembled the whole Jewish people in order to say that. Certain Meforshim, this is not the theme of the class, but just by the way, certain Meforshim say that how could you get the whole 600,000 people plus all the wives and the children, or just even 600,000 men is a tremendous task to get them all together. And so this was a miraculous thing. And you can explain it in different ways, but it was connected with tremendous nisim. Moshe then got together the whole congregation of the Jewish people, and he spoke to them. However, what did he tell them? Which that means that this is the beginning and the setting of the theme for everything he's going to say throughout the whole parsha. And Rashi says that whole parsha carries in itself the majority of the bodies of the Torah, Gufei Torah, Reiv Gufei Torah. And what that he means, principal or essential yanim in the Torah are all mentioned in the Parashat Kedoshim. The leading and setting the theme of the whole Parasha is the pasuk which says Kedoshim to you. You must be a holy people. You must be holy, and Kedoshim means, in the simple sense, you've just got to be holy. And the reason is because I, the Eibishter, am holy. So the immediate question that occurs to the intelligent reader is, let's say that we're going to be holy. Exactly what that means is an interesting issue. How are we going to be holy? In what way? But even more interest and more emphasis than that, he gives a reason why the Eibishter, why is he demanding of you be holy? Because he is holy. And he uses the Shem Havaya. He says, Ki Kodesh Ani Havaya. And he begins with the word Ani. Ani is myself, referring to the very essence of Hashem. Then he mentions the Shem Havaya, and then he mentions the Shem Elikechem. how can we possibly compare a human holiness with divine holiness? And because Hashem is divine, therefore we have to be divine. So that's the obvious question. So in order to appreciate that, first of all, let's try and understand what does it mean to be holy? In what way are we demanded here to be holy? So it comes along Rashi. Rashi says an interesting, basic, fundamental idea. Kedoshim tiyu hevu prushim min ha'royes. You must be separate and withdrawn from sexual immorality. How would you say arayas means improper unions. Umin ha'aveda, and from doing a sin in that realm. Would appear ha'aveda doesn't mean any avera. He apparently means here. In other words, that we often find that the word aveda, in a general sense, is used in reference to improper, immoral conduct in that field. So therefore, as you said, you have to be prushim min ha'arayas and min ha'aveda. And he says, shekol mokim, in every place, sha'ato moitze geder erva, every place where you find a fencing of immoral activity, sexual immorality, wherever you find a fencing of that, in other words, of taking care and keeping away, as it were, from the arayas, from all the forbidden unions, atomoitze kedusha, wherever you'll find that somebody is holy in that regard, then he's kept away and he builds himself a fence in his life in that inyan, then you find that he's holy. He's described by the Torah as being holy. Rashi brings a couple of examples of that when he's talking about the Koyanim a little bit further on in the Torah, and it's written by them, it's written Isha Zaino L'Chalola Loitikov. The Koyanim are allowed to take a harlot, somebody who's acts improperly morally in this matter, or somebody who is impure to the kahuna. He's not allowed to marry them. Ani Hashem mikadishchem, I am Hashem who is sanctifying you. So we see that the concept of sanctification is linked with being very, very pure. The kohanim are people that are going to be specially withdrawn and pure in this whole matter. And then he says, Oyichalom zaroi ani Hashem kachrei. So that's at the end of the parsha talking about the kohanim, and it's written that he shouldn't desecrate his seed, meaning that if he takes people who are not supposed to be taken by the kahuna, then he will desecrate his seed. Ani Hashem mikadeshoi, I am the one who is giving him sanctity. So we see that the sanctity that Hashem gives is in Hashem describes it as giving holiness in this Indian of being pure and withdrawn from improper moral activity in that regard. What a kohen is required to be very special, holy in that. If he in any way desecrates that, then he's going away from the power of kedusha that Hashem gives him. So we see that wherever there's a care and a special fending of oneself off in that particular matter, then it's called holiness. Hashem's given you holiness. So the same in our parsha here, Kedoshim Yiyu, well here it's written Kedoshim Tiyu. Well, over there it's written by the Kohanim, Kedoshim Yiyu, they shall be holy. And then it's written, as we saw here, they shouldn't take harlotry woman or somebody that she's been desecrated from the kahuna, and that would interfere with their being holy. So we see that wherever there's care in this particular matter, so then is mentioned the concept of divine holiness. But here, Rashi brings psukim which show that Hashem gives us special help to somebody who wants to guard himself in that matter, or is required to guard himself in that matter, and therefore he does it, then Hashem gives him a special sanctity, a special kedusha. So we see that somebody who's guarded and fenced off in that matter, then he's called holy. So therefore, says Rashi, that's what the Pasha means here. You have to be special in that matter. You've got to be very careful in all matters that have to do with the morality of the interaction between the sexes. The union of morality, particularly in that regard. Well, that's what brings kedusha, and that's what the Torah means. You've got to be fenced. You've got to have a lot of the word fencing of yourself off from becoming involved in that type of immoral activity. That brings kedusha. Sure, that's Rashi. So, answer the question, where is Rashi coming from that suddenly he makes a very different statement? But he said, wherever you find separation and care in such inyonim, you find kedusha. That's where you have kedusha. So, why would the Torah then put it at this point? Where we're going to start talking about all sorts of halachas in the Torah, which are very central halachas, as Rashi pointed out in the first dibur. And why at this particular point would the Torah feel necessary to say you have to be holy in that regard? So some people say that Rashi is saying this as a continuation of what we saw at the end of the previous Parsha, in Parashas Acharei. And in Parashas Acharei, right near the end, there was a whole series of mitzvahs, negative commandments, given in reference to all the forbidden unions in the Torah. A person allowed to take have relations with his mother, or with his aunt, or with his father's wife, or with all sorts of inyonim. And then later, there's also a mention of homosexuality, and then there's in a very strong way, and then it's mentioned other things which have to do with immoral activity of that sort, and that's all mentioned clearly in the Torah, all the detailed negative commandments connected with that. Well, so you might say, well, look, that's already been mentioned. We've already been told that in the Torah, and it's already written over there that that if you guard yourself from these matters, then you'll be holy. And it's also been written in earlier parashas in Benegea to these inyonim, that if you will guard yourself from these matters, then you'll be holy. So what's Rashi coming to tell us new then? I mean, why would the Torah all of a sudden repeat itself again and say Kedoshim Tiyu, a whole big major statement at the beginning of a parasha? You have to be holy, and Rashi is referring to that. They've all been mentioned in detail in the previous parasha, and they've been connected in different places with the concept of Kedusha. So why would the Torah repeat the whole thing again and make it a big general statement? And so general is it, the Moshe Rabbeinu had to tell it to the whole Jewish people in full assembly. And Rashi says a big definitional thing, that wherever you find this, then you find holiness. So, if we look carefully, what we can suggest, that Rashi's not saying about the etzem not doing any of the forbidden unions according to the Torah, which there are many of them. Rashi's not saying that. No, he's saying that you've got to be prushim, you've got to be very separate, and you've got to build a fence, and if you're fenced off, then you're holy in that matter. In other words, what we can suggest, that Rashi is saying that this pasuk and this whole lead into the new parsha that we're now dealing with, that's coming to tell me that you have to be more than just normally careful about all these inyonim. You have to build, as it were, a fence. You have to do things, and you have to go out of your way, and then if you do that, then you become kodesh. And the truth of the matter is that this, what Rashi says, is brought down in the Medrash. It's brought down in the Medrash Rabbah in Parsha Kedoshim, and it says over there exactly what Rashi says. It says wherever you find a geder in the union from Kedusha, in the union of in proper sexual behavior, then you find Kedusha. It goes on to say that we find certain people that they were very careful in this matter, and they're called holy. They're called Kedoshim. They're given the name Kedoshim. And it brings a whole story about Elisha Hanovi, that's brought down in one of the Haftarahs, albeit in Braces, a long time ago, so I don't expect you to remember that Haftarah. But it's well known that there was a Isha and her husband. They used to put up as a guest. Elisha Hanovi used to come to their house, and he used to have a special room where he went to stand. And because of their kindness in taking him in, whenever he went past there, he gave the woman a promise that she would have a child, which she didn't have. And she had a baby boy, and then he died. You know the whole story. And then Elisha Hanovi came back, and he brought him back to life. You know the whole story. So it's written over there that this lady described Elisha, and he's coming quite often past their house to her husband. And she suggested that they build this special little apartment for him, that he shouldn't have to just come and pass by, but he should be able to stop and stay there or rest if he wanted, and they built him a special little place. So she says to her husband that there's a holy man called Elisha. A holy man called Elish Kodesh. He's always coming past, and it happens to be that's Elisha Hanovi. So the Medrash says, why is he called Ish Kodesh, a holy man? So the Medrash says that whenever he came to the house, he never looked directly at this lady. He never said at her directly, never looked at her directly, but he was always very guarded with his eyes, and he didn't look at her, full. But he would always look to the side, or he would always talk very, sneerstic with this lady that she built the whole room, and eventually he promised her a son. He promised that she would have a son. And then the Gemara brings another very amazing story from the time of the Chachomim, or the time of the Tanoim V'Amoraim of the Gemara, and it brings the report of that's right. And before that other report is brought, it's written that this section in the Torah, which talks about Elisha Hanovi and this lady, that somehow or another, the Medrash said we heard from this lady, or we knew from her, that she never saw any signs of anything unclean in the room of Elisha. Dahainu, that sometimes if somebody sleeps on a bed, certain things can happen, and she never saw any sign of that. There was never, and nothing was ever like that. All the time he used to come visit them, everything was always pure and tachlis, purity. So then it goes on to tell this servant lady. She says that she was the servant of Rabbi Elisha, not Elisha, Rabbi, I've forgotten his name, one of the Tanoim, and she says that she used to, for years, she looked after his room and cleaned up his room. And she says also there was never any sign of anything having happened. There's a sign, so therefore the Gemara says there's a sign that they were holy, they were Anoshim Kedoshim. So wherever you find purity in this matter, they find holy. These are the Medrash. So if we look carefully at that Medrash, then it would appear that we're not talking about the actual fact that Elisha Hanovi, he never had any forbidden unions with women he's not supposed to. I mean, that's obvious that he didn't. We're talking about that he was very careful and very fenced, and he was very proper the way he acted. He was porush, and he was separated, and he was fenced. He never looked at her, probably never had anything, any improper things happen to him at night time or anything like that. He was always very pure and very holy. In other words, we're not talking about the actual things which are forbidden. We're talking about being careful and being, well fenced in. So we suggested that what Rashi means, Prushim V'Geder, wherever you find a Geder. And therefore, one of the great Meforshim, the Kli Yoker, he says, what does Rashi mean with this word geder? So it's well known. A geder means a fence or like a hedge that like divides between two properties. And so a geder, he says, is something which is basically a relatively normal activity, but in reference to that particular Inyan, you don't use it. For example, to see with your eyes is a rather normal thing, but to see in that direction with your eyes is already not good. So therefore, he didn't do it. In other words, he was guarded and fenced in that matter. Therefore, the Gemara brings an example. As on a Gemara, where it's written that if you have a sum of money to give to a woman, you shouldn't count the coins into her hand. If you look at her hand, then you look at the rest of it. As they state in the Gemara, you must be very careful. Therefore, it's a Siddish custom. If you're in a shop and a woman wants to give you a change, you just let her put it on the counter first and then you pick it up. You don't swap money from a woman in her hand if you can avoid it. And you don't count money into a woman's hand. These are the Gemara. And so once again, to count money is all right. I don't want to count money, but to count it in that way, that's not good. And the same with to look, to use your eyes to see, but not that type of thing. And the far, that's what Rashi's saying, that to be holy, you've got to be called holy in a ordinary way, not in some relative way, holy like this or that. Holy kedushin to you, they got to be separate from everything to do with that type of immorality, not from the things which are forbidden, not from that, but you've got to make a fence in order to never come to those minyanim, will be attracted by them. And therefore, Rashi said, if you do that, then you're holy. So, in Cain, what's it got to do with this Inyan? The Avish is saying, why am I demanding that? Because I'm also holy. What's that? How would Rashi be afraid? Rashi doesn't say anything about it. So we should suggest that maybe he does, because he mentions that where's the Kedusha mentioned in reference to being careful in these matters by the Kahanim, it's written, I am Hashem who is Makadish you. So maybe the Pirush is that Hashem gives you koyach. If he sees that you're making an effort, then he gives you koyach and he supports you. In other words, some of the great Meforshim want to link this with what is written right at the end of last week's Parsha, not last week, I mean, it's still this week, the end of the last Parsha, was written that you must guard my guardianship in this matter. Levilti aseis mechukas atoyaveis asher nasu lifneichem. You must guard the guardianship. In other words, you must, make, so it's put down in certain places in our sages, that means you've got to make a guardianship to the main mitzvah. There's a mitzvah, but then you've got to do things to keep yourself away from ever coming to it. Now, Rashi brings it's also a warning to the Beis Din to make efforts to educate people not to get involved in these things, etc. So we see from that there's an Inyan of, in previous Parsha, being guarded and watching. So if you're already being guarded and you're watching, like Rashi said, you're making a gather, then Hashem helps you. And then what's put down on one of the great Meforshim, called Kaneach Rosa, that he says it's got to do with another famous klal which is mentioned in the Gemara. And maybe Rashi is also hinting at that. It maybe includes, even though it's not clearly in Rashi, that is, Habor l'taher Masayin oisei. That's written in the Gemara Masechta Yuma. If you come to purify yourself, you want to be pure, then they help you from heaven. Masayin oisei means you get help, special help from heaven. And the Gemara says a further statement, Odom mekadosh atzmoi ma'at milmata mekadoshin oisei harbei milmata. That if you make a little effort to holy yourself, then they give you a lot of holiness milmaila. And the Alter brings that in Tanya in Perek 27, Perek Kov Zayin at the end. And the Alter learns it in a pasuk which is not far from here. Yishkadishtem, you should make yourself holy. V'yisem kadoshim, and be holy. So the Alter says that Kadisha means making an effort to be holy. You will be holy. That's like a promise that Hashem will be mamshich on you, a special kedusha from heaven, and He will guard you and look after you. So maybe that's how the Panei Rosalind, but that's a connection with the. That's what it means here. It means here that the Torah is urging us here to make an effort to be holy, not just in that matter, but in the matter of those sexual immoralities, of all inyanim concerned with Torah, that if you'll do that, you'll have divine help and you'll be helped. That's his pshat, or even Klalli. But Rashi could also borrow from that idea with the giving of a reason. Ki ani Hashem Elokeichem. What sort of reason? How can we possibly compare ourselves to Hashem? No, it means that Hashem will literally dwell and help with the person who shows that he's trying very hard to be Kedusha. If he's making the effort, then he'll be helped by Hashem. We're all talking in delicate things, not in the obvious inyan. And the whole reason why the Torah requires that of us, in order that we should never get anywhere near but we should be very guarded, and that's a special inyan all of its own right. But then you become holy. There's a inyan called kedusha, and holiness means that you become separate. You become withdrawn from the world, and once you become withdrawn from the world, then you're in charge of things. You're not, caught up in all the narishkeit, all the silliness and foolishness and folly of the world. You're separate. You're God. And so maybe we can suggest that that's also the pasuk finishes by saying that you should be holy ki kadosh ani Hashem Elokeichem. That we see here there's three main levels, as I pointed out earlier. There's kodesh ani, well that means Hashem Himself. Hashem Havaya is a very high name in Hashem's names. It's what's called His essential name. And then Elokeichem means how He comes down and becomes your personal, as it were, divinity, how He relates to you. Now that's the first name which is mentioned at the beginning of Matan Torah. It's written, Anochi Hashem Elokecho. Anochi is Atzmas. Hashem is the name. Elokecho, it's really your koyach and your chayis. But that is Elokus. So Rashi says it. Maybe Rashi is relying on the fact that what Hashem means is that if you try to make an effort to be holy, then why? Because I'm holy, and then my holiness will come down and dwell in you, and you'll have a special koyach, like the Panei Rosalind says, that since you've made your effort, then you will be guarded from heaven. You have a special guardianship from heaven. You'll fall into all these inyanim. And maybe that's what Rashi's saying. And that's what maybe we could tell you. However, not everybody goes with that same idea. Now comes along the Ramban, and the Ramban introduces a whole new concept into this. And he says, quite a basic taina, that all those immoral sexual unions have all been referred to in the previous parsha. Why would the parsha repeat it all over again here and make a whole new thing out of it in this new parsha already been told? And like I said, that's a little bit of a difficult one. Therefore, we have to say that Rashi's learning to bench yourself off, not necessarily, etc., etc. So therefore, the Ramban said he feels that that's a difficult pshat. It's already been mentioned in the other parsha. Why would we need to mention it again here? And therefore, says the Ramban, he says something else altogether. And he says that this is a general statement which had to be told to everybody, because it's telling us a very basic idea in the Torah. And that's just an old saying by the Chassidim, to give you the idea what the Ramban is saying. An old saying by the Chassidim, Ados was me tornish, tormenish. That what you're not allowed, you're not allowed. And this was me meg, lav dafke medav, dafne. And that what is permitted, not always you need that. Not always it's good to have what's permitted. Meaning, so that's exactly what the Ramban says. And the Ramban says the idea of kedusha, of holiness, is not keeping away from what you're supposed to keep away from. That's written in the Torah clearly. That's that's obviously forbidden. Everybody's going to keep away from that. He said, however, the Torah did permit me certain minyanim. The Torah said, for example, I'm allowed to eat, I'm allowed to do all sorts of other things, as long as I eat the right type of machonim, I eat kosher food. Yeah, there can be marital relations, there can be all sorts of things that are permitted to us. So maybe I'll say, oh well, since this is permitted to me, I'll just have a good time. At least what I'm allowed to do, let's have a good time in this world. And therefore, it could be that a person, says the Ramban, can be a novel Parashas Acharei. He can be somebody who's very grob and unpleasant with the permission of the Torah. In other words, you say it's all got a hechsher from the Badat. It's all got a hechsher on it. Maybe you've got Rav Lander's hechsher. Yeah, and I'm not doing anything forbidden, but I'm just having a good time, cashing in. Why not? Yeah, and so the same with the other inyan we mentioned before, the whole inyan of relations with the whole thing. And so, well, I can have a good time. Why not? And other things are permitted to me according to the Torah. And therefore comes along the Ramban, and he says there's a very famous klal, kadesh atzmacho v'muto la. So listen, in the Medrash, what it says, you should make yourself holy in even what is permitted to you. Even that which is permitted, you should act in a holy way. You don't have to just cash in. Yeah, when you need to eat, so you need to eat, or you don't make a huge, how do you call it, fuss about it. You don't have to have all the best, and so on and so on and so forth, with all the things that we can imagine that the Torah said are okay. You could say, oh, let's have a good time. That was the Ramban. Here the Torah is telling us a special lesson which is neged to all Jews.